Doping in Russian sports is a significant issue. Media attention began growing in December 2014 when German broadcaster ARD reported on state-sponsored doping in Russia, comparing it to doping in East Germany. The World Anti-Doping Agency published a report in November 2015 which was highly critical of the Russian Anti-Doping Agency and the All-Russia Athletic Federation. In November 2015, the International Association of Athletics Federations suspended Russia indefinitely from World Track and Field events due to widespread doping, following allegations by a Russian former lab director about the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. WADA commissioned an independent investigation led by Richard McLaren. McLaren's investigation found corroborating evidence, concluding in a report published in July 2016 that the Ministry of Sport and the Federal Security Service had operated a state-directed fail-safe system using a disappearing positive methodology from at least late 2011 to August 2015. In response to these findings, WADA announced that our USADA should be regarded as non-compliant with respect to the World Anti-Doping Code and recommended that Russia be banned from competing at the 2016 Summer Olympics. The International Olympic Commission rejected that recommendation, stating that the IOC in each sports international federation would make decisions on each athlete's individual basis. On the 4th of August 2016, one day prior to the opening ceremony, 270 athletes were cleared for competition, while 167 were removed because of doping. 3 days later, the International Paralympic Committee voted unanimously to ban the entire Russian team from the 2016 Summer Paralympics, having found evidence that the DPM was in operation at the 2014 Winter Paralympics. Background: Soviet era. According to British journalist Andrew Jennings, a KGB colonel stated that the agency officers had posed as anti-doping authorities from the International Olympic Committee to undermine doping tests and that Soviet athletes were rescued with tremendous efforts. On the topic of the 1980 Summer Olympics, a 1989 Australian study said there is hardly a medal winner at the Moscow Games, certainly not a gold medal winner, who is not on one sort of drug or another, usually several kinds. The Moscow Games might as well have been called the Chemists' Games. In documents obtained in 2016, it was revealed that a statewide Soviet Union track and field doping system was implemented in preparation for the 1984 Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles. The document detailed the then currently used steroids operations of the program along with suggestions for further enhancements. It was dated prior to USSR's exit from participation in the 1984 Olympics. The communication was directed to then head of the Soviet track and field system and was prepared by Dr. Sergei Portugalov of the Institute for Physical Culture. Dr. Portugalov was also one of the main figures involved in the implementation of Russian doping program prior to the 2016 Summer Olympics. Doping issues from 2001 to 2009. In 2008, 7 Russian track and field athletes were suspended ahead of the Summer Olympics in Beijing for manipulating the urine samples. The president of the International Biathlon Union, Anders Besseberg, said, "We are facing systematic doping on a large scale in one of the strongest teams of the world." Reviewing 7,289 blood samples from 2,737 athletes from 2001 to 2009, a report found that the number of suspicious samples from country A notably exceeded other countries. One of the authors said that country A was Russia. In October 2009, IAAF General Secretary Pierre Weiss wrote to Valentin Balaknichev that blood samples from Russian athletes are recorded some of the highest values ever seen since the IAAF started testing, and the tests from the 2009 World Championships strongly suggest a systematic abuse of blood doping or EPO-related products. Allegations of state-sponsored doping in 2014 are documentary. In 2010, an employee at the Russian anti-doping agency RUSADA, Vitaly Stepanov, began sending information to the World Anti-Doping Agency alleging that RUSADA was enabling systemic doping in athletics. He said that he sent 200 emails and 50 letters over 3 years. In December 2012, Darya Pishjalnikova sent an email to WADA containing details on an alleged state-run doping program in Russia. According to the New York Times, the email reached 3 top WADA officials, but the agency decided not to open an inquiry and instead sent her email to Russian sports officials. British journalist Nick Harris said that he contacted the International Olympic Committee with allegations about Grigory Rodchenkov's laboratory in Moscow in early July 2013. According to Stepanov, even at WADA there were people who didn't want this story out, but he said that a person at the organization connected him with the German broadcaster ARD. WADA's chief investigator Jack Robertson believed that the organization was reluctant to take action and that media attention was necessary, so he obtained David Howman's permission to contact a journalist. The journalist, Hafo Seppel, had previously reported on doping in East Germany and other countries. In December 2014, ARD aired Seppel's documentary, Geheimsake Doping, wie Russland Sensiger macht. The documentary alleged Russian state involvement in systematic doping, which it described as East German style. It includes statements by Stepanov and his wife Yulia Stepanova, alleging that Russian athletics officials supplied banned substances in exchange for 5% of an athlete's earnings and falsified tests together with doping control offices. Russian long-distance runner Lilia Yushobikova allegedly paid €450,000 to cover up her positive doping result. The allegations included participation of Dr. Sergei Portugalov, who has been accused of being involved in organization of state-sponsored doping going back to early 1980s. Aftermath. In January 2015, then RAF President Valentin Balaknichev resigned as treasurer of the International Association of Athletics Federations. In response to the ARD documentary, WADA commissioned an investigation, the report of which was published on the 9th of November 2015. The 323-page document, described as damning by The Guardian, reported widespread doping and large-scale cover-ups by the Russian authorities. It stated that the Federal Security Service had regularly visited and questioned laboratory staff and instructed some of them not to cooperate with the WADA investigation. 2 staff members said that they suspected that the offices and telephones were bugged. The report recommended that RAF be declared non-compliant with respect to the World Anti-Doping Code and that the International Olympic Committee not accept any 2016 Summer Olympics entries from RAF until compliance was reached. A day later, WADA suspended the Moscow Anti-Doping Center, prohibiting the laboratory from carrying out any WADA-related anti-doping activities, including all analyses of urine and blood samples. On the 13th of November, the IAAF Council voted 22-1 in favor of prohibiting Russia from World Track and Field events with immediate effect. Under other penalties against the ARAF, Russia has been also prohibited from hosting the 2016 World Race Walking Team Championships and 2016 World Junior Championships, and ARAF must entrust doping cases to Court of Arbitration for Sport. AFAR accepted the indefinite IAAF suspension and did not request a hearing. ARAF's efforts towards regaining full IAAF membership will be monitored by a 5-person IAAF team. On the 18th of November 2015, WADA suspended RUSADA, meaning that Russia does not have a functioning NADO for any sport. In November 2015, France began a criminal investigation into former IAAF President Lamine Diack, alleging that in 2011 he accepted a €1 million bribe from the All-Russia Athletic Federation to cover up positive doping results of at least 6 Russian athletes. In January 2016, the IAAF gave lifetime bans to the former head of the Russian Athletics Federation, Valentin Balagnichev, and a top Russian coach, Alexei Melnikov. In mid-January, WADA released the second report by its independent commission. 2 former directors of RUSADA, Vyacheslav Sinyev and Nikita Kamayev, died in February 2016. The Sunday Times reported that Kamayev had approached the newspaper shortly before his death planning to publish a book on the true story of sport pharmacology and doping in Russia since 1987. Grigory Rodchenkov, a lab director described by WADA as the heart of Russian doping, was fired by Russian authorities and fled in fear of his safety to the United States, where he shared information. In March 2016, ARD broadcast the documentary Russia's Red Herrings, alleging that athletes were alerted about testing plants and offered banned substances by individuals at RUSADA and ARAF. According to a May 2016 report in the New York Times, the director of a prominent laboratory, Grigory Rodchenkov, said that doping experts collaborated with Russia's intelligence service on a state-sponsored doping program in which urine samples were switched through a hole in the laboratory's wall. He said that at least 15 medalists at the 2014 Winter Olympics were involved. On the 19th of May, WADA appointed Richard McLaren to lead an investigation into the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. An ARD documentary in June 2016 implicated Russian sports minister Vitaly Mutko in covering up doping by a football player at FK Krasnodar. In the same month, IAAF Deputy General Secretary Nick Davis was provisionally suspended over allegations that he took money to delay naming Russian athletes. According to the BBC, emails from July 2013 showed that Davis had discussed how to delay or soften an announcement on Russians who had tested positive. In June 2016, WADA released a report stating that the work of its doping control officers had been limited by a significant amount of unavailable athlete reports and mistests, insufficient or incorrect athlete location information, and little information about the location and date of competitions. Some athletes named military cities requiring special permission to enter as the location, and some national championships, including Olympic qualifiers, were held in cities with restricted access due to civil conflicts, preventing testing of the competitors. WADA also reported intimidation of DCOs by armed Federal Security Service agents, significant delays before being allowed to enter venues, consistent monitoring by security staff, delays in receiving athlete lists, and opening of sample packages by Russian customs. 90% of Russian athletes did not respond or emphatically refused when WADA requested to interview them as part of its investigation. Director General David Howman stated, "It was the very right time for those who considered themselves clean. They had 9 months, plenty of of time, and none came forward. On the 17th of June, the IAAF Council held an extraordinary meeting, principally to give the Russian Athletics Federation a further opportunity to satisfy the reinstatement conditions for IAAF membership. A task force chaired by Rune Andersson recommended against reinstating Russia after reporting that criteria had not been met and that there were detailed allegations, which are already partly substantiated, that the Russian authorities, far from supporting the anti-doping effort, have in fact orchestrated systematic doping and the covering up of adverse analytical findings. The IAAF voted unanimously to uphold its ban. A week later, the International Weightlifting Federation decided to give a one-year ban to Russia, along with two other countries. On the 3rd of August 2016, the IOC ratified the decision, and Russia's weightlifting team missed the 2016 Summer Olympics. On the 18th of July 2016, Richard McLaren, a Canadian attorney retained by WADA to investigate Rodchenkov's allegations, published a 97-page report covering significant state-sponsored doping in Russia. Although limited by a 57-day time frame, the investigation found corroborating evidence after conducting witness interviews, reviewing thousands of documents, cyber analysis of hard drives, forensic analysis of urine sample collection bottles, and laboratory analysis of individual athlete samples, with more evidence becoming available by the day. The report concluded that it was shown, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Russia's Ministry of Sport, the Center of Sports Preparation of the national teams of Russia, the Federal Security Service, and the WADA-accredited laboratory in Moscow had operated for the protection of doped Russian athletes within a state-directed fail-safe system, using the disappearing positive methodology. McLaren stated that urine samples were opened in Sochi in order to swap them, without any evidence to the untrained eye. The official producer of BEREG kit security bottles used for anti-doping tests, Berlinger Group, stated, "We have no knowledge of the specifications, the methods of the procedures involved in the tests and experiments conducted by the McLaren Commission." According to the McLaren report, the disappearing positive methodology operated from at least late 2011 to August 2015. It was used on 643 positive samples, a number that the authors consider only a minimum due to limited access to Russian records. The system covered up positive results in a wide range of sports. In response to these findings, WADA announced that our USADA should be regarded as non-compliant with respect to the World Anti-Doping Code and recommended that Russia be banned from competing at the 2016 Summer Olympics. The International Olympic Committee decided to decline 2016 Summer Olympics accreditation requests by Russian sports ministry officials and any individuals implicated in the report, to begin reanalysis on a full inquiry into Russian competitors at the Sochi Olympics, and to ask sports federations to seek alternative hosts for major events that had been assigned to Russia. On July 21, 2016, the Court of Arbitration for Sport turned down an appeal by the Russian Olympic Committee and 68 Russian athletes. The following day, the International Paralympic Committee began suspension proceedings against the National Paralympic Committee of Russia. On the 24th of July, the IOC rejected WADA's recommendation to ban Russia from the Summer Olympics and announced that a decision would be made by each sport federation, with each positive decision having to be approved by a CAS arbitrator. WADA's President Craig Reedy said, WADA is disappointed that the IOC did not heed WADA's Executive Committee recommendations that were based on the outcomes of the McLaren investigation and would have ensured a straightforward, strong and harmonized approach approach. On the IOC's decision to exclude Stepanova, WADA Director General Olivier Niggli stated that his agency was very concerned by the message that this sends whistleblowers for the future. On the 30th of July 2016, the IOC announced that a final decision on each athlete would be made by a newly established IOC panel consisting of Igor Urdina, Claudia Bocal, and Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr. Originally, Russia submitted a list of 389 athletes for the Rio Olympics competition. On the 7th of August 2016, the IOC cleared 278 athletes, while 111 were removed because of the scandal, having sent samples for forensic analysis. The International Paralympic Committee found evidence that the disappearing positive methodology was in operation at the 2014 Winter Paralympics in Sochi. On the 7th of August 2016, the IPC's governing board voted unanimously to ban the entire Russian team from the 2016 Summer Paralympics, citing the Russian Paralympic Committee's inability to enforce the IPC's anti-doping code and the World Anti-Doping Code, which is a fundamental constitutional requirement. IPC President Sir Philip Craven described the Russian anti-doping system as entirely compromised, and the 18th of July 2016 as one of the darkest days in the history of all sport, and stated that the Russian government had catastrophically failed its para-athletes. IPC Athletes Council chairperson Todd Nicholson said that Russia had used athletes as pawns in order to show global prowess. On the 23rd of August 2016, the Court of Arbitration for Sport dismissed Russia's appeal, stating that the IPC's decision was made in accordance with the IPC rules and was proportionate in the circumstances, and that Russia did not file any evidence contradicting the facts on which the IPC decision was based. The Federal Supreme Court of Switzerland rejected another appeal by Russia, saying that the IPC needed to demonstrate it had fulfilled its obligations in upholding anti-doping protocols, and that its interests in an immediate lifting of its suspension outweigh the International Paralympics Committee's interests in fighting doping, and in the integrity of athletics. It did not succeed in this in any way. In an interview with NRK, WADA's Director General Olivier Niggli said that Russia is threatening us and our informers, alleging that Russians were bugging houses and carrying out daily hacking attempts. He stated, "I think this will cease if they stop looking at us as an enemy, and instead accept that there is a problem that we must work together to solve. But for the moment they are sending out completely the wrong signals." Media coverage. Russian doping has been featured in several documentaries broadcast in Germany, France, and the United States. Geheimzake Doping. Wie Russland Sensige macht. Art. Das Erste aired 3 December 2014. Geheimzake Doping. Im Schattenreich der Leichtathletik. Art. Das Erste aired 1 August 2015. Geheimzake Doping. Russlands Täuschungsmanöver. Art. Westdeutscher Rundfunk aired 6 March 2016. Russia's Dark Secret. 60 Minutes. CBS News aired 8 May 2016.